Hello! Hello, and welcome back to Adjusting the Mic. And welcome back to Belmont Bunch today, where we're in the fallout of the end of the Barry Trotz era. Very shockingly. I was working on finishing something for work early in the morning yesterday when I got a call from my friend Brad, and he asked me what the hell was going on, and I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I was at a loss for words, which doesn't happen very often. I guess I will start with the numbers and what happened under Barry Trotz's time, go into stuff that Lou said, and then have personal talk about Barry Trotz at the end. So, Barry Trotz. 152, 102, and 34. That is from the New York Times. That is the Islanders' record under his tenure. I think that's not exact because I believe there were 2 or 3 games this year where he was not behind the bench. So, that is their record under his reign. So, just to clarify that right out of the gate. 103 points straight out of not having Tavares, having, basically a roster that everybody laughed at and said, like, this is going to finish last place, including me. And he's able to take it to a first-round sweep of the Penguins. And it was a ridiculously fun regular season. Maybe the pinnacle, definitely the pinnacle from a regular season perspective of Barry Trotz's tenure with the Islanders. There weren't any of the caveats of shortened seasons with those asterisks. 82 game season. The Islanders just did it. Probably a less talented roster than, maybe the least talented roster he had. He still had, Val Filppula was still doing things. Leo, they did have Taves, still, and Leddy. Leddy has not been good for a little bit, though, so I don't really put too much into that, but the defense had more talent, I guess, definitely than this year. But 103 points, and it revived the franchise. And the next 2 years, a little bit more difficult in the regular season, really, really tough circumstances. But the circumstances kind of helped out the Islanders having those shortened season here where they were flailing, going into the quarantine break or whatever you want to call it, the NHL pause. And, they get into the play-in bracket. They beat Florida fairly easily. And then the surprises start with really kind of steamrolling the Caps. What looked like they were going to steamroll Philly, who was the hottest team in the league at that point. The Islanders avoid blowing a 3-1 series lead and win that series. And then taking a Tampa team, that's about to become, one of the better teams I've ever seen, to 6 in the third round. And I think we were pretty happy with that. The next season, obviously, still with COVID, having a 56-game schedule, having it only played among certain teams, regionally, definitely, something to consider. And the Islanders were pretty good, but again, did do a good job of beating up on the bad teams. Come playoff time, probably still questions about, hey, can they beat good teams? And they did. They beat Pittsburgh in a series that the Isles weren't fantastic, but Tristan Jarry was awful. But Ilya Sorokin was pretty good, so that helped. And also the Boston series, a series I'm always going to remember as maybe the peak of Barry Trotz. I didn't think they were going to win that series going in. They lose game 1, didn't look very good, and they find a way. Just like in round 1, they were down 2-1, win the series. They win the rest of the games in the series. And I think that game 6 against Boston at home is the most treasured Barry moment I think I'll have. Just the team, feeding off the crowd. Unbelievable. And then, again, falling one step closer to the cup, one game closer. last year. I think they would have won in the final if they got there. Very, very difficult 2 years in a row to go out to the champs and probably put up the best fight against the champs in both years. Although Florida Panthers, I see you in round 1 of last year. And then this year was very difficult. 84 points. Definitely a disappointment. Missed the playoffs by a lot. But really, really, it was one of those, I saw one person put it as a Murphy's Law type of year. Anything that could go wrong did. That's maybe an overstatement because the Islanders, in terms of man games lost, weren't super high. They were all right in that regard. I think the 13-game road trip is a fair criticism or a fair, excuse. And look, I don't think Barry had a great year. I don't think he utilized. Look, it's a combination. I don't think he should have utilized Zdeno Chara as much. Definitely not. I had issues with the way that Oliver Wahlstrom was put up and down the lineup. In both of those cases, though, it's not all on Barry. Lou did not have a plan B for this team after trading Devon Taves. They tried to trade Leddy that first year. They couldn't. They knew they had to move somebody out to sign Barzal and Bo and Sorokin and Pelech eventually. And, they chose Taves, and it has burned them. And it kills me every time in the playoffs we watch him score. I'm happy for him, but it still kills me. What else? So Barry not handed, I think, a fair deck this year. Oliver Wahlstrom also needs to take his own responsibility a little bit for just not playing well this year. I know it's not easy to get moved around the lineup, and I wish that he had a more consistent spot. But the Islanders were playing with all of the lineup the whole year. He was not the only one who was getting moved around because the Isles really struggled to find what worked early on. And I think a part of that was in Anders Lee's respect, getting back from that injury, still getting over, probably maybe the fear of, putting his body on the line again, which I have no problem with. Obviously tore his ACL, so, and he was great in the second half. And a lot of guys were really good in the second half, and I think it showed you, I think, that Barry hadn't lost the team, but I can't say that for sure, because there's rumors. It's hard to put stock into rumors when, Lou, one of the good things about Lou is that he runs such a tight ship, and nothing gets out. And so, it's speculation at this point for people to be saying that, it was a friction between, the players. Maybe the players told Lou, that they needed a new voice. And Lou's taking the bullet, for the players. Because that would look, the players don't want that. They respect Barry Trotz, even if they potentially wanted a new voice. My worry is I just don't know. It seems like in all the chaos, and you can never predict Lou Lamoriello, but that Lane Lambert has a shot at this, and that would be kind of weird for the comments that Lou made about wanting a fresh voice. I guess, Lane's a different voice, and I'm sure he would have his own coaching style, but it is interesting. It's still, I don't know, a part of the Barry Trotz coaching staff. I do worry that we lose our goaltending coaches now, Korn and Greco. For Varley, I guess I'm not as worried about that. He's a veteran. He's set in his ways. Fairly, I don't know. Sorokin's not like a kid. He's 26. I'm 26. I feel like a kid. But he, has, just gotten better this year. He was great. So kind of hoping that the coaching, Pelech and Nelson and Dobson, guys that flourished under Trotz, really worried. I think it's useless to really speculate about how the coaching change will affect those players in the moment, because how could we tell? How could we possibly tell? So it's one of those things. I know it's easy to have hot takes, but we might just have to wait until the regular season to see how it affects them. But back to Barry Trotz. Now for the personal stuff. I'm forever going to love Barry Trotz and thank him profusely if I ever see him for these 4 years. I know this year wasn't as good, but just to have stability, just to have a team that, I mean, this year not as much, but you knew every night was going to go out and was going to put everything on the line. Barry Trotz got every drop out of this team, every possible win he could get out of this team. I really, really, truly believe that. If you're going to tell me that playing Aho or Salo would have put them into the playoffs, would have made up for a 19-point gap just over Zdeno Chara, no, absolutely not. I do not believe that. Would it have made them better? Yeah, probably, I don't know, a few points. Maybe not Aho. Probably not Aho. And that's a pieces thing. What pieces did he have? And that's why I'm angrier at Lou today. And I think I'm glad that I waited a day. I mean, work kind of forced it that way, but it did give me time. I had some back and forth on Twitter. And I don't know, it gives you a little bit more perspective, tells you what other people are thinking. I think it probably makes my take a little bit more nuanced, because I do think that Barry had a bad year this year. It took a long time to really figure out the lines, and it took a long time to even start to play, guys like Aho or Salo over Chara. Even though, again, I don't know how much of a difference it would have made over the whole season. And I do think that Salo having AHL time is useful. He's just coming in from overseas. I know he played professionally overseas, but I don't think there's a problem acclimating him to the North American game. And truthfully, if Lou had just done a better job in the offseason of filling that left defense, then Salo would not have been, there wouldn't have been this much talk around Salo. And I think Salo was good, but not like a revelation that you change your whole season over. And so I don't think you change his development as a player chasing a 19-point playoff gap. I know it wasn't always 19 points, but the Isles really struggled to stay in it this year. So, I'm always going to remember Barry. 18-19 is probably, it's one of those, there's a couple years in my fandom that are always going to be like, that was a year that we really, got going. I think of, the lockout shortened 13 season, and putting everything into that Pittsburgh series. I think of 14-15 and the team, just playing Capuano hockey, but playing with their hearts and giving the Coliseum a send-off. They would get another shot at that. But I'm hurting today, and this is not fun, and I am not sure who I want to coach them next. I will say that, if the player rumor is true, then I understand. Who knows when we'll know that, if we'll know that. There was a tough poll yesterday somebody put out on Twitter about, would you keep, if you can only keep one, it's Trotz or it's Barzal. And this Islander team is so deficient on talent. And I know that's really mean to say, but, look, until Kiefer and Wally can do it consistently, until I see a little bit more out of the fourth line, which Cizikas had a better second half, but not much else. The top six took way too long to get going. I really, the talent is not on par with playoff teams. And that needs to change this offseason. And with this firing, Lou has put himself now. There's no other scapegoat if that's what happened. There's nothing else now. Lou has to knock this offseason out of the park. And I think that to start next year, if they start off crappy again and they didn't have a great offseason, I think Lou has to go. I think that's like a non-negotiable. That doesn't mean anything. I don't have any ownership stake, but I don't know. That's my thought. So let me know what you think below. I'm really interested to hear what people think. I've seen a little bit of everything so far, and let's have a conversation. All right, thank you all. Goodbye.